Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we will learn how to use nested loops in Python. Nested loops are the loops within loops. Whether you use one loop inside another or multiple loops within each other, they are called nested loops. First, let's understand when to use nested loops. The need for the nested loops comes with experience. The more you code, the better you will understand when a simple loop was not sufficient and you will need to use nested loops. Although nested loops are often not the best solution due to their time complexity, n raised to power 2 for 2 nested loops and n raised to power 3 for 3 nested loops, and so on. They are sometimes necessary. For example, if you are creating a social media platform and need to find the number of friends each user has, you will need to loop through all the users and then loop through each user's friends. Similarly, in a banking scenario, to find the number of transactions each user has, you will need one loop for users and another for their transactions. Let's look at a simple example that demonstrates nested loops. We will create a program that asks the users how many rows of asterisks they want to print in a pattern. For instance, if the user wants 5 rows, the first row will have 1 asterisk, the second row will have 2, and so on. Here is the code to achieve this. Ask the user for the number of the rows. Rows assigns int input. Enter the number of the rows. Outer loop for each row for I in range 1 rows plus 1. Inner loop for the printing asterisks for j in range I. Print asterisk and print a new line after each row. Print blank. Let me explain the code by step. Number 1, we ask the user to enter the number of the rows they want. Number 2, the outer loop runs from 1 to the number of the rows entered by the user. Number 3, the inner loop runs from 0 to the current value of the outer loop variable I, printing an asterisk each time. Number 4, after the inner loop completes for each row, we print a new line to move to the next row. Let's visualize the code using Python Tutor, a tool that allows you to see Python code execution step by step. Number 1, paste the code into the Python Tutor. Number 2, enter the number of the rows, for example 5. Number 3, click visualize execution to see the step by step execution. The visualization will show you how the outer loop increments the row number and the inner loop prints the asterisks accordingly. Each time the inner loop finishes, the outer loop moves to the next row until the rows are printed. Tips and tricks. Minimize the nested loops. Whenever possible, try to minimize the use of the nested loops to reduce the time complexity. Sometimes using data structures like dictionaries or the sets can help avoid nested loops. Number 2, break entry. If you find a solution or condition inside the inner loop, use the break statement to exit the loop early, which can save unnecessary iterations. Number 3, use efficient data structures. Sometimes you can replace nested loops with more efficient data structures. For example, you can use dictionaries for the faster lookups instead of looping through a list. Number 4, avoid deep nesting. Deeply nested loops more than 2 levels are generally a sign that the code can be optimized. Look for ways to flatten the logic or use functions to make the code more readable. Number 5, profile your code. Use profiling tool to understand the performance of your nested loops. This can help you identify bottlenecks and optimize them. Number 6, pre-computer value. If you find that you are recalculating the same values multiple times in your loops, consider pre-computing those values outside the loops. Example, multiplication table. Here is another example where we use the nested loops to print a multiplication table. Ask the user for the size of the multiplication table. Size assigns int input, enter the size of the multiplication table. Outer loop for the rows. For I in range I, size +1. Inner loop for the columns. For j in range 1, size +1. Print f I multiplied by j colon 4 and print a new line after each row. Print blank. In this example, the outer loop runs through each row and the inner loop runs through each column, printing the product of the row and the column indices. That's it for this video. Nested loops can be very useful in many scenarios, so understanding them is crucial. In the next video, we will learn about break, continue and pass statements. Thanks for the watching.